Hello friends! Welcome to my channel. Once again, I am Kathy Olson of Love Inspired, love-inspired.com, and today we are going to talk about how to split up your website for two different audiences. You may be running into an issue that you are speaking to two different audiences, either because you have two separate businesses, or perhaps you have wildly varying services or products and you're really speaking to two separate people. So what do you do when you come to this crossroads where you're really speaking to two separate types of people, either different businesses or audience, and you're not quite sure how to split your website and or your marketing? That's exactly what I'm going to cover today. I'm going to answer this question in two parts. There's two sections that you have to change, and that is, one is marketing. That's that whole point. How do you split up your marketing efforts? And the second part of it is your website. How do you split up your website? So before I even get into that, we need to figure out, do you actually need to split them? Is it a yes or is it a no? And I'll tell you really quickly how you can tell if you should split them or not. So the first answer is no, you shouldn't split them, but you should combine them. And how you know that you should not split them and they should be combined is, number one, if your audience can overlap in any way, shape, or form. Is there any circumstance in which audience A would ever overlap with audience B? So maybe, for example, if you offer business coaching services, perhaps they hire you for business coaching services, but maybe you also offer design services or web services. So they're two separate types of services, but there are some people that might overlap. Maybe they want to hire you for business coaching and for design services. And so in those cases, there are some people that you can sell both products to. So when you use your messages, you can find that thread that unites them and really sell to both people at the same time. And so I would challenge you to look at those two separate, audience A and audience B, and say, is there any opportunity for cross promotion? If there are any kind of overlap, you definitely want to combine the audiences because you're selling two things to one person. And the second way that you will know that you do not want to split the businesses but instead combine them is if you honestly don't have the bandwidth to run two businesses. It's better to run one business really well than two ones really crappy. So if you really don't either have the bandwidth yourself or you don't have the money to hire someone to help you have the bandwidth, then think about combining. If the thought of doing two blogs and two different sites to update make you break out in hives, don't do it. Okay, so that's when you would say no to splitting them and combining them instead. When would you say yes to splitting them? The first one is if one of your businesses cannibalizes the other one or is detrimental to the other one. So for example, way back in the day, I used to do wedding invitations. And when I did wedding invitations, it was great. I had my brides, whatever. But I also came from a graphic design background. And so I started meeting people that were like, don't you know how to do websites? Don't you know how to do logos? And we're in the wedding industry. You know the wedding industry. Can you do something for us? But the problem is, I was creating websites for other invitation professionals. And I couldn't have, at the very bottom, website done by another invitation designer. It was a conflict of interest. So I had to split the two businesses because not only were the audiences didn't really have anything in common, but they also were detrimental to each other. It's like another example would be if you have a really high-end product and a really low-end product, maybe people are only going to buy the low-end product because you have this high-end product, but you would need to split them so that they can each have their own space. And the second indication that it's a yes, you want to split is, like I said, if you really have nothing in common. If they have absolutely nothing in common, your clients are in different life spaces, maybe one is a mom and one is a college kid or something, they're just completely different. And or it would really confuse your people. So if you do two things that are completely unrelated, and if someone gets to your website or sees your marketing, they're like, what? Are you kidding me? I'm so confused. Then guess what? Don't confuse them. Okay, so now that we know if we do want to split or not, how do we do it? So if you chose no to splitting and you want to combine, let's talk about marketing. What you can do here is you can switch off on your social media. So since your clients are overlapping just a bit, you can talk about both things. You can do 80% one, 20 the other, 50-50, 60-40, however you want to do it. But keep in mind that the story should be talking to both people. So really focus on that overarching theme that they have in common. Speak from that voice and that perspective, so you're also talking to both people. The way to split your newsletter is kind of the same thing, to sort of switch off, talk about different topics. But another thing you can do is actually segmenting your list. And what I mean by that is segmenting your audience A and your audience B into separate newsletter funnels so that audience A only hears audience A stuff, audience B only hears audience B stuff, and then you'll have your general stuff that you'll talk about that both will get. Okay, so now to the biggie. What about your website? How do you combine two audiences with your website? And my answer to this is you go choose your adventure. So if you're an 80s or 90s kid, you know what choose your adventure is. If not, I can, yeah. Basically, choose your adventure means that once they get there, you want to head them down a path. And so everything can kind of be combined in the beginning. You can show different things, highlight different features on your homepage, but you want to send them down a direction as quickly as possible. And I don't mean they get to your page and they say, choose A, choose B. Like that's the most boring thing I could possibly think of, so don't do that. You want to speak to what they would be interested in. So maybe it's a blog post, maybe it's a feature, depending on whatever your business is. Maybe it's a product, maybe it's a service. You start talking, hey, do you want to do this? Or hey, can I help you with this? And that's actually how you get them to head down the different paths. By appealing to a feature or something they'd be interested in versus saying, hey, are you a bride? Or hey, are you a business owner? Actually appeal to those people and send them on their way. And then once they get there, once they get down that kind of rabbit hole of stuff, that's when you can get more specific on your messaging. But you also can still think about cross-promotional items. So maybe on the bottom you say, hey, we also have this kind of stuff, if you are both. And that way you can kind of send them through your funnel that way to sell them both things. Okay, so let's get to the second answer. Let's say you said, yes, I do want to split them up. Now what do I do? So I realize this one is a little bit more complicated because one business might be bigger than the other one. You might have like a business that you've been running and then now you're starting a new business or a new arm of your business, right? And so that doesn't have as much traction as the first one. But if you do have one that's bigger than the other, you can utilize that as a springboard for the other business. So for example, Love Inspired, we do custom shop sites, we do all kinds of stuff like that, but we also have ShopSite School, which teaches people how to DIY it. Instead of building ShopSite School from the ground up, because it has something to do and it's slightly connected to my other business, but separate, I'm using Love Inspired to springboard ShopSite School. So let's talk about marketing. For marketing, you can either go two ways. You can either go totally separate accounts, have totally separate client avatars that you're talking to, totally separate graphics, totally separate colors, or you can do it the other way where the bigger company kind of takes the other company under its wing a little bit. You talk a little bit about it on your main channel, but you basically sending them over to your other channel so that they can get more information. Eventually they will totally be separate. And the same kind of goes with your newsletter. So if you have a big newsletter list for your main business and no newsletter list for your small, you can start segmenting it out a little bit and saying, hey, click here if you're interested in ShopSite School and you want to hear more about it. Or like I said, you could totally start from scratch and just have them totally separate, have separate opt-ins on the site too. So last, let's talk about the website. And I think we can kind of do it both ways too. If you want them to be totally separate companies, kind of a no-brainer, you're going to have website A and website B. They're not going to have anything to do with each other. I don't think you really need advice on how to do that because that's probably an easy option. But if you are trying to grow website B, so they're still separate, but you can kind of give it a little bit of a leg up, is to have it still be a sub-brand of your main umbrella company. So maybe it's ShopSite School by Love Inspired, so that you can start saying, hey, here we are this company, we're not trying to hide it, but if you need help here, go here. And you can kind of start it out that way to sort of get traction rolling and then eventually split the two, because they are going to be basically two separate websites with two separate URLs. You can still start the conversation on your big business and kind of start switching it over. So I know I've given you a lot to think about today. If you have any questions, please comment below and I will answer them. And as always, I hope this was helpful. If it was, would you share this? I would love that. It would be amazing. If you haven't already subscribed, what's wrong with you? Just kidding. Subscribe below, like, and have an awesome day, you guys. I know this stuff is hard, but I know you guys can do it.